2:47 a.m. Ghost swarm on, biosmoke blooms. 0259. Kasuka 4 chases decoy cables. 0309. $9 million worth of missiles are gone. 0316. 3 javelins punch a reinforced bunker. You'll see why fiber-connected drones cut through jamming, how fog and biosmoke turned IR eyes to static, and how a precision strike exploited that blind spot. If you want the exact moves that nullified an S-400 network, keep watching. The payoff is a clear, step-by-step kill chain. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Why does a cable no thicker than a shoelace turn a billion-dollar air defense into background noise? At 2:47, the team answers by lifting a ghost swarm under low fog, with biosmoke rolling across the tree lines and berms. The air turns into a controlled haze that eats heat contrast and swallows silhouettes. Small quad rotors rise in pairs, each trailing a 5-meter fiber that stays slack over wet soil and concrete culverts. The path the drones want is not in the airwaves. It runs down that thin glass thread. The corridor they need is built out of chemistry and timing, not radio tricks. The goal isn't to beat radar in a fair fight. It's to give radar too much of the wrong thing, while the real control path stays silent and cold. Kasuka 4 wakes up like a stadium floodlight, sweeping for the telltale pulse of uplinks. It hunts handshakes and control bursts. It finds a field of cables instead. Operators crouch along drainage lines and spool thin decoys across gullies, letting them drape into water and brush. Each run builds a fake bearing line for direction-finding gear, a trail that suggests a controller where none exists. You can see the logic engine start to tip as the net tries to triangulate noise. The math chases ghosts because the inputs were planted to do exactly that. Fiber control in this moment is a landline during a blackout. No RF, no handshake, no ping to echo. It's a hard wire that ignores the storm. The command path is air-gapped by physics, not software. There's no uplink to corrupt, no packet to spoof, and almost no electromagnetic footprint to catch. Jammers can roar all they want. The drones don't hear them because nothing in their loop listens for RF. The only signal that matters flows down a hair-thin strand of glass, immune to the spectrum fight raging overhead. Biosmoke carries its own logic. It's a chemistry-driven fog bank tuned to scramble thermal contrast like frosted glass pressed over a lens. Heat plumes blur at the edges. Cool edges warm just enough to look like background. Infrared eyes see noise where lines should be, so shapes don't resolve cleanly and software struggles to lock. In that haze, a drone body becomes another smudge, and a warm cable touching cold water looks like a natural seam, not a clue. Decoys go to work on radar too. They sit where side lobes are fat and feed just enough energy to trigger auto-cue logic. The defense software wants to rationalize patterns, so it promotes false mass into priority tracks because the geometry looks like density and motion. That's the trap. You don't beat the sensor head-on. You feed its habits until it sees what you need it to see. The more it believes, the more it commits. At 2:59, the EW head slews hard toward the brightest bait. That cue drags the missile crews with it because the system weighting says mass is breaking the inner ring. Launch cables slap, canisters crack open, and guidance loops chase the decoys. A few real FPVs vanish in the wash, but the exchange begins to tilt as the kill chain locks onto the wrong sky. By 3:09, an estimated $9 million is gone into ghosts. The real drones stay inside the null, wired and quiet, threading through the smear of fog and biosmoke. They ride glass instead of airwaves and keep their profiles flat. No chatter, no wake in the spectrum. The defense thinks it won a round. It actually opened the gate and dimmed its own lights. With magazines lighter and scopes blinded, the window opens. A kinetic strike can now move along the quiet corridor and land where electronics can't recover fast enough. The next move doesn't need a broadcast, only a steady hand on a fiber line and a target that still thinks it's alone. How do 3 missiles find a bunker when every radar says nothing is there? The answer starts the moment the decoys drain the magazines and drag the spectrum off target. The real guidance path opens inside a pocket where GPS is worthless and the air is heavy with fog and biosmoke. That mix builds a dead zone for Russian sensors. It is not magic. It is gap management. The fiber drones creep along trenches and culverts, keeping the cable tight and the motors low. They pass under power lines and slide along berm shadows, then rise just enough to stitch a narrow corridor. What matters now is line of sight for a single task. Hold a laser box on an aim point that the network can't resolve. The S-400 net expects cruise profiles that arc and loiter, or ballistic curves that shout their path. It does not expect a hand-built kill chain cut from a few hundred meters of glass thread. Operators kneel in mud and work a laser handoff under cloud, swapping the spot from one platform to the next so no single drone lingers. Each shift takes seconds. Each step lives below the radar's confidence level. The path is quiet because it avoids the cues that trigger track promotion. The black box rules never wake up. Think of a stage blackout where one flashlight shows only what the crew wants the audience to see. Everything else disappears. The fog and biosmoke act like that curtain, dulling hot edges and flattening cold gaps, so the only clean contrast is the laser's invisible box on the target face. The rest of the scene fades to smear and grain. That curation of the frame is the trick, not to blind everything, but to make one square foot stand out to the right eye at the right moment. Javelin's top attack profile is built for this. It climbs, then dives to strike the thinner armor on the roof, and its thermal seeker needs a stable cue, not a perfect picture. Even in fog and smoke, it can lock if foreground clutter is controlled. The fiber drones do that job. They smooth the foreground, hold the aim point steady, and let the seeker read a clean delta where it matters. The missile does the rest. Physics favors the arc and the angle of attack. Around the depot, Hera beacon decoys start their second act. They pulse at the perimeter and sketch a false horizon that stretches range gates thin. The IADS tries to reconcile ghost depth with real edges, and the math spreads its attention across the ring. The real aim point stays quiet and cold in the middle, never promoted to a track worth shooting. Sensor saturation builds not from noise, but from too many almost targets. Integrated air defenses run on track-confirm rules. They need continuity, velocity, and cross cues before committing. A short window can break that loop. When the observe-orient step stalls, the decide-act step lags or jumps to the wrong object. That is the window the team built. Seconds where the network doubts and the operators don't. By 3:14, final checks pass. Fiber drones pin the laser box. The EW head is still chewing on decoys outside the ring. 3 launch tubes crack, motors flare. The missiles arc up into the low cloud and tip in. At 3:16, they cut into the reinforced bunker. The heat plume blooms, comms spike, and the magazine node goes dark under its own shock load. The strike ends the loop before confirmation catches up. With the bunker silenced, we can finally ask what the destruction actually removed from the battlefield, and why Ukraine waited. Low-cost cyber-physical deception flips the exchange ratio. Cheap tools steer expensive systems into wasting shots, fuel, and crew attention, opening a narrow lane for a decisive strike. Fiber lines, biosmoke, and dummy cues create a fight where cost per effect collapses for the attacker and balloons for the defender. So think bigger. If a 25-minute window can invert a battlefield's balance sheet, what happens when brigades standardize wired control, smart decoys, and disciplined timing across several axes at once? Next, we'll test whether this ROI holds against decoy-resistant filters and multi-sensor fusion, or if the ghost swarm evolves again.